everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from Fox News dated July 17th. It says, study claims U.S. news outlets served as megaphones for Hamas and Gaza war. Tell me something I don't know is what I'd respond to with that. But it says, study paints harrowing picture of media narratives for humanitarian aid in Gaza. So I'm in no way, shape, or form surprised by what I said is that at the top here. X out of, get rid of that. All right, it says exclusive. A new study by the Network Contagion Research Institute, or NCRI, alleges that major U.S. and European news outlets served as uncritical megaphones for Hamas-linked narratives during the war with Israel in Gaza, amplifying claims that ultimately undermined a U.S.-backed food relief operation while shielding the terrorist group from scrutiny. The 102-page report, titled The Fourth Estate Sale, How American and European Media Became an Uncritical Mouthpiece for a Designated Foreign Terrorist Organization, that's a hell of a title, concludes that outlets including MSNBC, CNN, The Washington Post, and Reuters published or promoted unverified claims sourced from the Gaza Health Ministry without disclosing that it is controlled by Hamas, a U.S. designated foreign terrorist organization. Yeah, I was hoping that when the Gaza Health Ministry was mentioned that the article would say that, otherwise I was going to. But yes, the Gaza Health Ministry is run by Hamas. So of course, they're going to put out there like 11 billion babies were killed, and then all these organizations go, oh, well, it must be true, even though they lie about things all the time, like just constantly. It says these narratives, according to the study, falsely blame the U.S.-based Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, for deadly incidents and fed conspiracy theories that spread across global media and social networks. It says we need to audit the media, a senior researcher at NCRI and lead author of the study, who wished to remain anonymous, told Fox News Digital. What we found is not just bias, it's the laundering of information warfare. When a terrorist-linked health ministry makes a claim, and that claim becomes the basis for international headlines without independent verification or source transparency, that is not journalism. That is narrative laundering, and it puts real people at risk. Reverend Johnny Moore, president of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, told Fox News Digital that the report validates what he and his team have been enduring on the ground since launching aid operations in 2025. When they say launching in 2025, it makes it sound like it was a long time ago and it was like a few months ago. It says, on one level, I wasn't surprised by the findings because I've been experiencing the effect of these lies for weeks, Moore said. But, on the other hand, I was shocked by the sheer scale of it all. Let's be clear. Media outlets in the United States, the UK, and continental Europe are literally doing the work of terrorists. They have become the default press secretaries for designated terrorist organizations. As absurd as that sounds, that's exactly what has happened. According to GHF, the group has delivered over 70 million meals to Gazan civilians since May 2025. Yeah, it's been 2 months, okay, without a single aid truck being looted. The NCRI reports cites that this is a direct threat to Hamas's control over Gaza's traditional aid economy, which has long relied on systems that the terror group can exploit, divert, or weaponize. Yeah, they steal the food and they sell it back to their people at exorbitant prices. That's just what they've always done. Says they write papers and letters and sign documents, and yet we're doing it, GHF Interim Executive Director John Akery said in a response to NGO criticism. He implored those groups to please come and help us. Says we believe Hamas made over $1 billion last year just from manipulating the system of aid managed by the United Nations and others, Moore said. Says they take free food, then sell it. They hoard it for their fighters. They use it to recruit. So when we came in and disrupted that pipeline, Hamas saw us as a threat to their business model and their control. Bingo! That's exactly why that, they don't want these folks there. So according to NCRI, every time the GHF distributed aid, anti-Semitic and conspiratorial online narratives increased in intensity, including claims the group was feeding Palestinians drug-laced food. These spikes in disinformation, the report says, often coincided with milestones like news site openings or meal delivery totals, suggesting a coordinated effort to discredit the operation online. And here's a chart showing some of the data. I'll leave it there for a minute. And skipping down, it says the study documents a pattern in which major media platforms published or aired claims that were later found to be incorrect, often without public correction or transparency. In one widely circulated example, CNN posted on June 1st, 2025, that at least 31 Palestinians were killed amid chaotic scenes near an aid site run by U.S.-backed private foundation in Gaza, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. And there is the tweet. It says the NCRI study had this to say about their report. It says CNN blamed the IDF and the U.S.-backed GHF for the deaths of over 30 civilians based solely on the Hamas Health Ministry's word. The CNN tweet, which went viral and garnered nearly 500,000 views, did not include context about the health ministry's terror ties, nor did it indicate the unverified nature of the claim beyond stating that CNN could not independently confirm the details. That's because it wasn't the IDF that did it. It was Hamas that did it. And then blamed the IDF, and then just people went, oh, okay, it must have been the IDF then. Says the report further notes, CNN later updated its story, citing an Israeli denial and including more context, but the viral post remained unchanged. This illustrates the speed at which misleading narratives can spread and the slow, often inadequate pace of correction. It's because the lie gets around the world many times before the truth comes out, or whatever that saying is, but you get the point. In response to Fox News Digital's inquiry, CNN stated, there was never any doubt that the aid center in question was a GHF aid site, and we did not associate the GHF with the incident. The shootings occurred along the approach route to the aid distribution site, approximately 800 meters from it, and involved people walking there to get aid, a point which no one disputes. CNN added that the reporting relied on multiple sources, including eyewitnesses and background confirmation from an Israeli official, and that the story was labeled as developing and updated according to standard editorial practices. In later updates, CNN stated that it cannot independently verify who was responsible for the shooting, noting that the international media does not have access to Gaza. The CNN later added Israel's denial to its full story, quoting the IDF. Findings from an initial inquiry indicate that the IDF did not fire at civilians while they were near or within the humanitarian aid distribution site, and that reports to this effect are false. However, this denial was not included in CNN's original viral tweet, which only cited the Gaza Health Ministry. It appeared later in the same thread and was eventually added to the full article. In an exclusive statement to Fox News Digital, the IDF confirmed that it allows the U.S.-based Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to operate independently within distribution zones, adding that forces have implemented safety upgrades including fencing, signage, and new access routes to minimize friction with civilians. Says the NCRI report also singles out MSNBC last month for amplifying unverified claims, which isn't surprising. MSNBC just lies about everything. Says MSNBC aired a segment alleging that Israeli forces fired on a crowd near a food distribution site affiliated with GHF, citing the Gaza Health Ministry's claims. At no point in the segment was the health ministry identified as being run by Hamas. Says the clip that aired on MSNBC's Morning Joe remains online with clarification, not correction, added in the description. NCRI analysts noted that MSNBC aired no comparable editorial scrutiny of the Hamas-run ministry. MSNBC later referenced the broader controversy in a follow-up segment the next morning on June 20th. NCRI also flagged a Reuters report as an example of misidentification in headline summaries. The report included references to an unnamed private foundation, which NCRI claims contributed to confusion, misattribution, and reputational harm. And so there's the correction by Reuters, okay. So you can already see how much BS is coming from left-wing sources, which is just, nope. It was Israel bad, Hamas good, which is the complete inverse of reality. It says a Reuters spokesman told Fox News Digital, an advisory issued to update the headline of this story misnamed the organization that was listed on the report. We regret the error in the advisory. The report we reviewed bears the name Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, not Global Humanitarian Foundation. We stand by our reporting. It says, by contrast, the NCRI study highlighted the Washington Post's social media activity as a prominent example of how unverified claims can rapidly spread. According to the report, on June 1st, the Washington Post tweeted at least 30 people were killed in northern Gaza while waiting for food aid trucks to arrive, the Gaza Health Ministry said. The tweet did not mention Hamas or the ministry's affiliation with the group. Yeah, it's kind of a key point of this that just these organizations don't ever seem to want to mention. As the tweet quickly went viral, garnering more than 2.4 million views in under 24 hours, NCRI noted. It was subsequently amplified by numerous prominent influencers and even cited by at least 2 foreign government officials as a rationale to impose sanctions on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Says the NCRI study states that the tweet was never corrected or contextually clarified by the Washington Post or its social media editors. However, following inquiries and public scrutiny, the Washington Post deleted the tweet and issued a correction on X. Says the article failed to make clear, and it's the tweet embedded below, but says the article failed to make clear if attributing the deaths to Israel was a position of the Gaza Health Ministry or a fact verified by the Post, the outlet wrote. The early versions fell short of Post standards of fairness and should not have been published in that form. Says Fox News Digital reached out to the Washington Post for further comment, but has not received a response as a publication. Yeah, they're not going to respond. They were wrong, but they just don't want to admit it. Says both the Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, and the U.S. State Department issued statements to Fox News Digital affirming support for GHF while criticizing those who have undermined it. A track record of distributing over 68 million meals to date, all while preventing Hamas looting, is absolutely incredible and should be commended and supported, said a State Department spokesperson on background. We call on other aid agencies and the UN to participate in the secure aid delivery system. And another chart here for you. I'll leave it there for just a moment. But of course, the article is linked below, so you can always just click on it and find it yourself. The spokesperson continued, "The fact of the matter is, many of these NGOs and the UN fail to protect their aid deliveries, using phrases like self-distribution to describe Hamas robbing from them. Yet they take time to attack the one system that is securely delivering critical aid to Palestinians in Gaza. The attacks against GHF are unacceptable. Perhaps they should support the only system that is working instead of criticizing from the sidelines." As the IDF, in a separate on-background statement, said it allows the American civilian operation GHF to distribute aid to Gaza residents independently and operates in proximity to the new distribution zones and to enable the distribution alongside the continuation of IDF operational activities. It says following incidents in which harm to civilians who arrived at distribution facilities was reported, thorough examinations were conducted in the Southern Command and instructions were issued to forces in the field, the IDF stated. Says yet those measures were mostly absent from reporting in many U.S. media outlets, which instead portrayed GHF as operating under Israeli military control, which was an intentional distortion, Moore claims. Yeah, I'm not surprised that they did that. I'm sure they did that on purpose. Says the relationship is intentionally misrepresented. They want to present us as part of the IDF, which we aren't. Nope, they are not. So we actually want to work with the UN to help more people. We've extended our hand to them from the beginning, Moore said, but the UN is behaving like a mafia. So reason number 800 million to just kill the UN off says they're organizing opposition against us, in effect joining forces with Hamas because there's no difference in their policies. They'd never boycotted Hamas, but they boycotted us. Earlier this month, UNRWA Commissioner General Felipe Lazzarini called for the end to the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, labeling the program an abomination. And why did the article just skip here? It says labeling the program an abomination that provides nothing but starvation and gunfire. So obviously this dude is an idiot that doesn't know what he's talking about. And I know who this guy is, and he's totally anti-Israel, totally pro-Palestinian terror. So he's another guy you can just disregard his opinions on anything. His remarks came in an open letter signed by more than 230 NGOs, including Amnesty International, Save the Children, and the Norwegian Refugee Council, which calls for a return to a traditional UN-led aid system. Yes, because that's been working so well for the Palestinians. And Amnesty International is another organization that can go jump off into the Grand Canyon. It says Moore added that the UN refused to condemn Hamas for the killing of 12 of GHS's local Gazan aid workers. Says they similarly didn't issue a statement when 2 Americans were hit by a Hamas grenade a few days ago. It's an absolute scandal and an insult to the United States, he said. At the time of publication, the United Nations did not return Fox News Digital's request for comment. Yeah, they're not going to, again, for much the same reason the Washington Post didn't. Asked what keeps this team going in the face of such hostility, Moore said, "Our team believes in the mission entirely, and they get strength every day from the Gazans we serve, who are so grateful. We see something every day we haven't seen in the Gaza Strip in a long time. Smiles. Says the people need us and rely on us. We have to show up for them." Says an NCRI senior researcher agreed, but warned that the reputational cost of ignoring this media pattern goes far beyond one aid group. Says the damage here isn't just to the GHF, it's to the public's trust, to the credibility of democratic institutions, and to the security of people trying to do the right thing in the middle of a war zone, they said. If we can't name the sources of our stories, if we won't label terrorist-linked ministries as such, and if we let social media outrun the truth by 100 miles, then we are no longer a watchdog. We're a tool, and it's time the watchdogs were held accountable. So who watches the watchmen? There we go. So I'm not surprised that this is the way things are, that there was research done, and it turns out that media outlets were megaphones for Hamas and the Gaza war. You can just turn on a TV and see it. So let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.